This is Matthew Kratter from Trader University, and today I want to answer the question, could Bitcoin survive a nuclear war? Now, nuclear war is obviously about the worst thing that could ever happen, and I despise any politicians who play games around this and risk destroying so much. So nothing that I say in this video should lead anyone to believe that nuclear war is ever a good thing or to be taken lightly. But the question is, what if the worst case does ever happen? What happens to Bitcoin then? So there are different stages or different levels of a nuclear war. We could have tactical nukes being deployed to take out a few cities. This would be obviously, in terms of the human cost, an absolutely terrible thing, but the Bitcoin network would keep operating in every other part of the world. If you have a bunch of nukes take out a few continents, the Bitcoin network would keep operating again in every other part of the world that has not been nuked. Now let's say there's an all-out nuclear war. There'll probably still be many survivors, though obviously hundreds of millions or billions of people will die from nuclear winters, starvation, the knock-on effects of the EMPs, the electromagnetic pulses, which wipe out semiconductor chips, as we've talked about in an EMP attack video a couple weeks ago. But even in this situation, will Bitcoin survive? Yes, it absolutely will, and here's why. Because each full node contains a complete copy of the Bitcoin blockchain, including every single transaction since 2009, as well as who owns which Bitcoin today, what's widely known as the UTXO set. UTXO just stands for unspent transaction output. So the Bitcoin blockchain contains, a full version of it contains all of this very important information, all the transactions that have ever happened and where they ended up, such that who is holding which Bitcoin today. So fortunately, this information is globally distributed in a way that no other crypto blockchain is. People don't run Ethereum or Cardano nodes in their homes in the same way that Bitcoiners do. In fact, running an Ethereum node is quite difficult now. Most people outsource it to large companies like Infura, which are controlled by Ethereum insiders like Joe Lubin. Many people, by contrast in Bitcoin, many people are storing copies of the Bitcoin blockchain inside of Faraday bags or cages or other protective devices. If you're finding this video helpful so far, I just ask you to hit the like and subscribe buttons to help support this channel. If we want to take a look at where the Bitcoin nodes are in the world, we can use this map. We can see they're really on every continent. They're concentrated in North America and Europe, but there's still copies everywhere, deep in Russia, deep in Australia, in South America, in Africa, etc. And rather than there just being 15,000 or 16,000 nodes, Adam Back believes that there's actually about 100,000 Bitcoin nodes. This was back in October of 2020. I think this is a question for another video, but I'm willing to take Adam at his word regarding this. And there are probably more Bitcoin nodes now than there were in 2020. So over 100,000 nodes distributed globally, most of them containing a full historical version of the blockchain, and so it'd be very easy to bootstrap Bitcoin using these. I like to think of these nodes as almost like seeds. We have the Judean date palm, which is the oldest seed that has ever been excavated archaeologically and then germinated, and these seeds date from about 2,000 years ago. And I think you can think of the full nodes and their copy of the blockchain as being like seeds. Bitcoin is like a plant that has spread its seeds globally. And as long as a single seed, a single copy of the Bitcoin blockchain is still around, Bitcoin can be completely regerminated and regrown. If a global nuclear war completely wipes out humanity, well, then that's obviously a galactic shame. But if there's a small remnant left, Bitcoin will still be around and still be viable. And I have to ask people, can you say the same about the US dollar? How many people still use the Hungarian pengo or Greek drachmas or Weimar, the papier mark, or the Yugoslavian dinar? These are all extinct fiat currencies, and every fiat currency that's ever existed will or has already gone extinct. By contrast, Bitcoin has a way of sticking around. After nuclear war, Bitcoin will still have significant value, even after every single fiat currency has died off due to nuclear war, or more likely due to central bank money printing. These are the guys, these investment bankers, these lawyers who become central bankers. These are the real guys with the financial nukes, and they're the most dangerous people in the financial world. And this is why we need to use Bitcoin to take away their power. Now, after the nuclear blast, if you survive, are you actually going to wait around for your national government to reboot the banking system? And if and when that does happen, will you trust them to honor your previous account balances? This is not something that governments do even in peaceful times, as we've seen over the past 10 years in Cyprus, where you had the bank bail-ins, in Lebanon, where they closed the banks and people had to try to actually rob the banks to get their own money out, Nigeria, etc. And these countries like Nigeria that are trying to roll out central bank digital currencies. These governments are not known for respecting their people's money. And you can imagine in a crisis situation, they're not going to be too worried about restoring your Wells Fargo or Bank of America or Chase bank account. I'd be willing to bet that after a global calamity, anyone with Bitcoin will actually be transacting with each other far before the legacy financial systems are rebooted. And you can be sure that when they're rebooted, they'll be rebooted in favor of the government and not in favor of the people. So whether it's a question of a nuclear war, an EMP attack, as we talked about in a previous video, a global pandemic, other bad things, Bitcoin can always continue where it left off. Of course, there's always physical gold as well, which is also a bearer asset. But even in good times, there's no way to bootstrap physical gold into a global monetary network. You can store it in your basement, make your house a honeypot, but it's not a very practical way to store, especially larger amounts of money. It's too difficult to move, to store, to assay. It ends up getting centralized, and paper IOUs are issued against it, which is why the gold standard failed once already in 1971 and really even by the 60s, and led us to this terrible age of fiat money. Humanity, by contrast, will do everything that it can to rebuild the internet after a global calamity. When the electricity comes back on, the semiconductor fab plants are rebuilt, and some form of global communication resumes, probably some form of the internet, Bitcoin will return. And the question is, can you say the same for your Schwab or Robinhood account? Nuclear war is sometimes given as a reason not to own Bitcoin, but it's also a good reason not to own stocks or bonds or really to own anything else. So Bitcoin will return after one of these calamities. Can you say the same for your Schwab or Robinhood account? Can you say the same for your government and its bonds? Will they really pay you back the money that's owed, or will they cite an act of God, a quote-unquote act of God, like a nuclear war, to say that they don't need to do it? I think one way of thinking about Bitcoin is it's like a virus, or it's like the cannabis plant, or it's like cockroaches. It's pretty much impossible to stamp out. Even nuclear war would not be able to stamp it out completely, most likely. Bitcoin remains the most durable and robust currency for the world, both in good times and in apocalyptic scenarios. And it only takes one surviving node, one surviving full node with a full copy of the historical blockchain to keep it alive. Bitcoin remains decentralized with no single point of failure, like crypto scams and like the legacy fiat financial system. So if you're worried about nuclear war, you have to ask yourself, what's in your wallet? What's in your brokerage account? Where are you holding your savings? Are you holding your savings in government paper in U.S. Treasuries or some other form of IOUs? Are you holding paper gold, which will do you no good because you'll never be able to redeem the gold, especially when you need it most? By contrast, Bitcoin will still be around long after your paper wealth has been incinerated or devalued or confiscated. And it's more likely that it's going to be devalued or confiscated than incinerated. But I think even in the case of a nuclear war, Bitcoin will be fine. And I want to leave you with this image of the bonsai tree that survived the bombing of Hiroshima. I think this is one way of thinking about Bitcoin. It may appear small and insignificant, but it's actually an incredibly robust and anti-fragile network. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.